Homebrew content. For as long as the hobby has been around, there have been people looking at the game and saying, you know, this is good, but it could be better. Perfect! Homebrew content is extensive in today's market, to the point where it almost mimics the bloat of 3 and 3.5 for additional content from third-party creators. With sites like D&D Beyond, DM's Guild, GM Binder, and even... Everybody, run! Yeah, D&D Wiki has a reputation for a reason. Even though D&D Beyond can be just as guilty for insane stuff, just watch XP to level 3 reading through them, on D&D Beyond there's at least an organization system for what is and potentially isn't good with a downvote system. However, the wiki is the Wild West. Anything and everything you could think of is probably there. Now, that being said, regardless of where you get it though, it is always a good idea to run homebrew of any kind by your DM to see if they'll permit it first. Mainly to see if it fits the tone of the game, and pretty much just to let them know what they're getting into. However, we are getting ahead of ourselves. What even is homebrew content? The easiest way to explain it is that there are generally 3 forms of content for any given system: official, third party, and homebrew. Official content is as described. It's stuff released by the original publishers. For Call of Cthulhu, this would be Chaosium, Pathfinder is Paizo, D&D is Wizards of the Coast. And if I was going to name them all, we'd be here all day. Third-party content is content made for any given game by anyone other than the official publishers. In the D&D sphere, probably the most well-known are Kobold Press and Green Ronin. Green Ronin even had a hand in developing one of the worst 5 ebooks, while also publishing one of the best third-party books. Man, talk about a pendulum swing. Which then leads us to homebrew content. Basically, this falls into everything else. A decent way to describe homebrew content, whether it's sold or free, is anything that is released not by a publisher, oftentimes by one person. Though as mentioned, with the prevalence of the internet, the amount of homebrew content is at an all-time high, and with... well, anyone can do it. Now, this isn't to say that it's a bad thing. The fact that anyone can make anything for their favorite system is great. If anything, it just means you need to be more careful in what you allow and what you don't allow. Take the extra minute to look it over. After all, it's something that people have been doing since the beginning of the hobby. In many ways, homebrew is almost a rite of passage. Spells like Tensor's Floating Disc and Melf's Acid Arrow, for instance, were homebrew spells before they even became official. The tradition even continues today with Arkan the Cruel and the Vestige of Divergence. These characters and items were once homebrew. However, with the inclusion of these books are made official D&D content. Sort of. It gets a little weird with the Vestige of Divergence. With the inclusion of these books, what is and isn't official D&D content is a bit muddled. If the Vestiges are in this book, they're official. If they're in these, they're not. Even with the Blood Hunter and the other Critical Role classes on D&D Beyond are technically officially recognized homebrew, and that's not even getting started on Unearthed Arcana. I am so fun at parties. However, this doesn't answer the question of why we do homebrew in the first place. Well, it's because we can. Well, that's helpful. Okay, for a more nuanced answer though, it comes down to noticing that something is missing within the system and adding it in. The Rogue, originally called the Thief, began life as a third-party content that got adopted into the game. What was third-party then was basically what homebrew content looks like now in a way. Also, perhaps you like the current edition of a game you are playing, but feel as though something is missing that existed in an older edition, so you convert an older element into the current game. You are free to do so. In fact, there are actually a lot of tables out there that have house ruled and homebrewed their favorite system so much that it hardly resembles the original game they were playing in the first place, which honestly begs the question, why still play the system? Well, the answer is simple. They love it. I've never understood this mentality of people frothing at the mouth for players who refuse to move on to another game. I personally see the value in doing so and also encourage others to do it as well. However, some people like a specific game and don't want to move on because they love it. That's fine. which is where homebrew comes into play. It provides something new and interesting for people who may have been playing a specific game for an extended period of time. It can also add a different feel to a homebrew world that the normal classes may not be able to do. And while tweaking could definitely solve that and would definitely fall into the category of homebrewing, adding a whole new class, monster, or feat can really help spice things up. Honestly, we homebrew because it's fun. It adds variety and just helps change things up. It can also help with metagaming and changing up various monster abilities. At the end of the day, homebrew because you love it. Your homebrews will probably be powerful when they first start out. That's not a problem. That's the beauty of homebrew. It can always be tweaked and adjusted as you go. So yeah, homebrew away. Have fun doing it. Unless it's from the D&D wiki, in which case it can go